We continue with the subject of Mitre Saw operation as we next describe procedures for care and maintenance. Of paramount importance is the total isolation of your machine before you begin any maintenance or adjustment procedure. Blade replacement is undertaken by an operator and, as you will see, is not a difficult task, but one requiring your full attention and care. It is strongly advised that you follow the blade manufacturer's recommendations and safety instructions for a blade replacement. To gain access to the blade retainer, you will need to move the safety guard out of the way. This demonstration is typical, but for other makes or models, always consult the operator's manual as to the exact procedure. The next step is to loosen and remove the blade retainer screw. For this, you must use a correctly fitting spanner. The retainer screw has to be loosened in a clockwise direction. In other words, it has a left-hand thread. To prevent the spindle from turning, we must engage the spindle lock. This is a small lever near the gearbox section which has to be pushed in whilst you turn the blade. When the spindle has locked, loosen and remove the retainer screw. The outer retainer flange is removed, after which the blade can be removed from the spindle. Be aware that an adapter ring is most usually fitted into the center hole of the blade. Do not discard this item. An inner retainer flange remains on the motor spindle shaft. This is removed for inspection purposes. All parts should be laid out upon a flat, clean surface. Both blade flanges must be inspected for any damage such as cracking, distortion, and buckling. The flange face must be perfectly flat in order to offer full contact against the blade face. Renew the flanges if they are buckled or cracked. The retainer screw must also be in good condition. Renew this if there is any damage to the threads or to the hexagon. Physically examine the blade as to its general condition, including an examination of the teeth or tips and the flatness of the blade using a suitable straight edge. An effective means of checking the sharpness of teeth can be made with a piece of perspex. If the teeth are sharp, a shaving will be raised when the perspex is scraped against the cutting tips. Blades that are buckled or have broken teeth and missing tips, besides producing poor cuts, are also hazardous to use. Worn or damaged blades should be sent for inspection or repair to a professional saw specialist. The following factors must be considered whenever you replace a blade. First, the blade must be suitable for the material to be cut, that is, a wood blade for timber and an aluminium blade for aluminium. Next, ensure that the blade is the correct diameter to suit the machine. In our example, this machine will accommodate a blade diameter of between 255 and 260 millimeters. Never attempt to fit an oversized blade to your machine. Next, and extremely important, is the spindle speed rating which is given on the motor plate. The maximum blade speed rating displayed on the blade must match or be higher than the motor's spindle speed. Never fit a blade if the indicated blade speed on the label is less than the spindle speed shown on the motor plate. Next, we need consider the blade's arbor hole diameter, and this dimension you will also find marked on a blade. Diameters may vary slightly depending on the country of manufacture. Spindle adapters must be fitted in order to ensure that the blade mounts snugly upon the motor spindle. Always make sure that the spindle adapter that you select fits neatly with no looseness inside the blade's arbor hole. Do not use an adapter if it fits loosely, as this will result in vibration, which is a dangerous condition on a high-speed blade. Let us now look at a typical blade replacement procedure. The rear flange is first positioned onto the spindle. Next, we must fit the correct size spindle adapter. The blade is next, but first we need make sure that the blade is fitted the correct way round by noting that the direction of rotation marked on the blade matches that marked on the machine. Slip the blade onto the spindle adapter. Refit the outer flange and then the retainer screw, making sure that the blade remains mounted upon the spindle adapter. Using the correct fitting spanner and engaging the spindle lock, securely tighten the retainer screw. Tighten firmly, but without excessive force, as over-tightening can distort the flanges. Replace and secure the blade guard into position. And then check that it operates correctly. The blade is now checked to see that it runs true. Rotating the blade next to a straight edge or a square will reveal if any run-out exists. Never operate a machine if the blade does not run true. After a blade replacement, we should check the maximum cutting width, as this is affected by a blade's diameter. When the operating lever is fully down, there must be clearance between the blade and the metal of the turn base. Adjustment is made with the height adjusting screw situated directly above the spring housing. Turning this screw clockwise will increase the front edge clearance, effectively reducing the cutting width. Turning the screw anti-clockwise will increase the cutting width. For maximum cutting width, adjust until the front edge of the blade clears the turn base when the arm is held fully down. Finally, after any blade change, connect the power and, standing to the side, operate the machine without load for a few seconds. If you feel any vibration during this check, immediately stop the machine and have it checked over by a qualified service technician. The following checks should be made from time to time in order to maintain cutting accuracy. 3 checks are made, namely 0-degree bevel, 45-degree bevel, and mitre angle. You will require a 45-degree set square, an engineer's tri-square, and the necessary spanners to suit the adjusters. We shall begin with the 0-degree bevel angle setting. Make sure that the operating arm is brought to the fully upright position. In this position, the bevel scale angle should be reading 0 degrees. Using your tri-square, check that the blade is square to the base plate, as demonstrated. Adjustment, if required, is made by means of the limit adjuster screw situated on the right-hand side of the bevel tilt arm. Slacken the limiter screw lock nut, and then turn the adjuster screw in an appropriate direction. Tighten the lock nut, and then recheck the angle to make sure that the angle has not shifted out of square. Once you are satisfied that the blade is square to the table, check the bevel scale pointer to ensure that it reads 0 against the angle scale. If it doesn't, then the pointer will have to be reset to align with the 0 marking. Now we can attend to the 45-degree bevel check. With the sub-fence set to the left, swing the operating arm over until it contacts the limit screw. The scale should now read 45 degrees. If not, adjust the limit screw until the pointer is on 45 degrees. You can then check using your 45-degree square that the blade is in fact at 45 degrees to the turn base. The remaining angle that we need check is the mitre angle. Mitre angle accuracy is determined by the positioning of the guide fence relative to the blade. Begin this check by ensuring that the bevel angle is set to 0 and the lever locked. Next, ensure that the turn base is also set and locked in the 0 position. Bring down the control lever and, with the aid of a square, check the angle between the blade and the guide fence, which should be perfectly square. If adjustment is necessary, start by loosening each of the guide fence fasteners. Lower the operating lever and lock it in the transport position. Set up your square against the blade and then shift the guide fence until it aligns to your square. Retighten all the fasteners. And then recheck the angle to ensure that a perfectly square condition exists between blade and guide fence. With all 3 angles set correctly, you can be assured of maximum cutting accuracy. It is possible on modern machines for the motor brushes to be checked and renewed when they become worn. On this machine, which is typical of all others, the brushes are housed beneath brush covers situated on either side of the motor. It is absolutely essential to totally isolate the machine from the mains if you intend inspecting the brushes. Using a screwdriver, remove the brush cover and then carefully extract the brush from its brush holder. An indicator line shows the allowable limit of wear, which is approximately 1/3 the original length. When worn to this point, brushes must be renewed. It should be noted that brushes must always be renewed in pairs. If not worn, as in this example, carefully reinstall the brush back in its original position. Refit and secure the brush cover to complete the task. It is considered good practice to keep your machinery clean at all times. Unnecessary dirt and grime can conceal defects and make inspection of all components difficult. When you have finished using the machine, lock the operating lever in the transport position. Keep the power cable neatly coiled to prevent the plug from dragging on the ground when moving the machine around. When not required, set the machine aside in a dry and sheltered place out of the way of other operations. In conclusion, we urge that you adopt a safe working attitude and comply to general and specific safety recommendations and regulations when using power tools. Remember that safety regulations are put in place for your benefit and for those working around you. This concludes the audiovisual section for the compound Mitre Saw. Please join us in other programs in this series when you can learn about the safe use and care of portable power tools.